Joining us now is criminal defense attorney and former Manhattan prosecutor Jeremy Saland. Thank you so much for joining us. So a lot of attention on Mr. Costello today. Testifies that he was actually told that Michael Cohen didn't know anything at all, or that Trump didn't know anything at all about the hush money, that he just did it on his own. But then Cohen says, oh, I actually had reason to lie to Costello. Explain why he would be motivated to lie to him.
Well, because he had a concern, if you believe his story, his narrative, he had a concern that really Costello wasn't working for him. Costello was working for Trump, and he had to protect himself, and he didn't want things going back to Giuliani, back to Trump in this chain that would ultimately damage Michael Cohen and throw him under the bus and not left be holding the proverbial bag. So that's why he didn't trust him. And frankly, Costello could have been a valuable witness and had valuable information, even if very limited, if he would have conducted himself and comported himself to the respect that the court demanded.
And so Costello, obviously brought by the defense to bolster their case. Do you think that he did any good for the defense?
He did and he didn't. The way you share your message is incredibly valuable. And if I had a source to thumb through, I could probably find words from amateur to sophomoric and far more about his behavior, meaning Costello on the stand. And it was a detraction. And you'd have to believe that as a man who's been around the block, both as a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney, and having the team that Donald Trump has, be respectful. Listen to the court. Don't make yourself a sideshow to what could be a very important message that Michael Cohen lied, and you can't believe Michael Cohen, and it's the goal and object of that criminal defense team to take this away from falsifying business records and make it a case about the extorter Stormy Daniels and the liar, conniving, agenda-driven Michael Cohen. Costello could have given a little bit more, but he lost that opportunity to a large extent.
Donald Trump all along had said that he was going to testify, and then he said it would be in violation of the gag order, which was not true.
That's a lie.
Do you expect to see him take the stand?
I do not expect to see him take the stand. I think, let me rephrase that, unequivocally, absolutely, if he took the stand, he would make a fool of himself, a fool in front of the jury, and make a fool of his lawyers. He doesn't have the ability, however bombastic Costello was, I think you have to amplify that. We discussed briefly off camera, not 1,000, but probably 1,000,000 times more. And remember, it's never their burden, obviously, it's the prosecution's burden, but why would you feed them information and open up the door to certain evidence that may not otherwise come in?
Would you expect that the jury will read anything if potentially the defense only calls 2 people to the stand?
I don't think so. I don't think so. And they'll answer and explain that on their, when they close. And you'll have to recall, or maybe you don't, but it's important to understand that the judge will instruct the jury that you should not make any inference. And you can't make any inference if the defendant doesn't testify. He doesn't have to testify. So I don't think it will. This lies and falls in large part, not necessarily directly on Michael Cohen's shoulders, but it is borne upon him. And that's why the prosecution has used all those other witnesses and documents and records to bolster him and plug those gaps and holes.
You mentioned the jury instructions. How significant is that? How much does the ultimate verdict boil down to just what the jury hears is their job? Well,
those jurors were picked if you believe, and you should believe, that the defense said these are the ones we think will follow the law, and the prosecution did the same, and the evidence that's presented. Most juries listen to the judges. Doesn't mean they're going to agree among each other, but they listen to, this is what you have to pay attention to. This is the law. Doesn't matter that a lawyer on the jury may think something else. You have to follow my instructions and apply the evidence. So I have confidence in the judicial system and rule of law, even if I really believe outside the courtroom Donald Trump is making every effort to tear it down. But they'll do their job, and I think they'll do it right.
Mr. Saland, this is our first time discussing the case. I like to kind of get all of our legal analysts to weigh in about their crystal ball prediction. How do you think that this is going to end up ultimately?
That's a tough spot to put me in, but I'll answer that. I think the people's case went in very well. I think that they have moved it towards proving it beyond a reasonable doubt. The problem they have is, even if you can convict on a misdemeanor, that's a loss. If you hang a jury, that's a loss. They have to get a felony, but just one is all they need, though I would think if they get one, they'd get them all.
Mr. Saland, we thank you so much for your insight. Appreciate it.